Okay, that's not good. Okay. Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am Krista Burns here at the Nebraska Library Commission, your host. NCompass Live is the Library Commission's weekly online event where we cover any topics that might be of interest to librarians across the state. We do these sessions, we have commission staff that do sessions, and we bring in guest speakers as we have this morning. We do these sessions every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, and we do record them all, so if you are unable to attend one of our live sessions, we've got over 2 years worth, going on 2.5 years worth of recordings now that you can watch if you want to. This morning we have a group of people here who are going to demo a new, an updated website for doing legal self-help, legal research. And I'm going to hand over to Mary Jo Ryan here at the Library Commission to do our introductions and start them off.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
Thanks, Krista. Good morning, everyone. It's Mary Jo Ryan, and I actually am here because, first of all, because I love these people who have come to help us today, and we're so grateful to them. These are some of our program partners with our grant that we received through the Department of Commerce. It's the Library Broadband Builds Nebraska Communities Grant. And some of you out there who are listening to this are part of that grant. Some of you are not, but we're encouraging libraries all across the state to think of themselves increasingly, as I know you do, as a place where people come to get government information and to get access to resources that they can't get access to anywhere else. And this, in fact, is becoming a growing role in our libraries, and we all know that. So we're building partnerships with some of the agencies that are building the resources to make it easier for our customers to get access. And one of those resources is legal information, courts information. And so we knew this was a very important partnership for the grant, but we also know it's a really important partnership for all of you who aren't in the grant, who are just also helping people get access to information. Let me tell you who's here. First of all, on the far side, to my right, I don't know what it is on your screen, Janet Bancroft, and Janet's with she's the Public Information Officer for the Nebraska Courts system, and you guys call that the Administrative Office for Courts and for the Courts and the Supreme Court, correct? Did I say that right?
Courts and Probation. Administrative Office of the Courts and Probation.
For Courts and Probation. Okay, which of course includes Supreme Court. And next I have Richard Leiter, who is the Director and a Professor at the Schmid Law Library at UNL College of Law. Hey, Richard. Richard's been with us before. I'm sure you all know him. And Debora Brownyard is next to me. She's the Dispute Resolution and Rural Court Services Director for the Administrative Office for Courts and Probation. Right. You got it. Which we usually just sort of shortcut say the Supreme Court Office, right. But it's really the Administrative Office for all courts and probation. So today we're going to learn about what you've done to make your website more helpful for those customers that the libraries have out in the local libraries, and for people just in general trying to access legal information, as well as other ideas and resources and things that you want to jump in with. So we can be rather casual and conversational about this, but we want to be sure and point out your website. Who wants to start?
I would like to start.
This is
Janet, and I'm just going to run you through the website to give you a base of the information that you'll be able to access, well, you're able to access now through the internet. And this is our Legal Self-Help Center homepage. You can get it by Googling or going to nebraskasupremecort.ne.gov/self-help. It's right up at the top there.
But if you forget that, just Google Nebraska Legal Self-Help Center.
Yes.
That'll get you there.
We have different topics off to the side. We tried to make this user-friendly as much as you can with the complexity of topics that we deal with. And I think I would like to click for you on our most popular item, and that is families and children. We'll get you in there. And this is our most dense area of the website. We have more forms here than anywhere else because that's what's being requested from us. We recently put up a brand new set of forms on child support termination, and what we try to do on this website is truly make it a self-help. So when you go on, it will give you instructions. It will give you an overview of what the legal system needs from you and what this form is for. This is very specific. you can use this under the circumstances shown at the top. And
Janet?
yes.
Can we just run through it, because I think it's helpful for people to have a situation where I'm coming to the library and I've been paying child support to my ex-husband. You know, I'm one of those modern women that make more money than my ex-husband, and so now my youngest child is 19, and I shouldn't have to pay child support anymore. And so clearly when I go to this website, it says for use when my child is 19, or let's say my 18-year-old youngest daughter is married, or heaven forbid she's passed on. But could you just kind of walk me through what I would need to know and do when I come to this page?
You bet. And one thing is that we don't expect you as librarians to be in that much detail. If someone comes in and say they have a circumstance where they want their child support terminated, you'll have a variety of resources for them, and Richard will help you walk through those circumstances. In this case, if you hit this one on the money, which is the child has married and you want to cease paying child support, you would take them and show them our website and see if maybe there isn't something under families and children that can help them.
So you wouldn't, as the librarian, take me directly to that page. You would just take me to the laundry list, and then I would look at the laundry list as the patron.
Richard?
Yeah, I was going to say in a few minutes when we talk about what kind of help librarians can offer to pro se patrons, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail, and it gets...
But I think if we could use this as a little example.
Sure. Librarians cannot...
what would you say to me? I'm the patron, you're the librarian. I need to cancel child support.
What you can do is bring them to the site, to the collection of forms, and allow, and you have to even be careful about helping them select which form to use. So
you as the librarian or Janet's the librarian could say, well, let's look at the Nebraska Online Legal Self-Help Center. And so the library director would pull this page up or help pull that page up? That would be okay?
Yes. Yeah, sure. And in the example that you gave, the
terminate child support?
Families and children.
You could say, well, let's see. Let's look at families and children, and let's see what's on this page. Patron, do you see anything here that would work for you? Is that kind of how you would phrase it?
Yeah, and presumably what you'd be doing is directing the patron to this website. Not actually.
You wouldn't say, oh, look, child support termination.
This is
the
exactly
form
what you need. No.
You don't say that.
You don't select forms for
people. Say, hey, look,
people.
here's a list, right? A list of different forms. Is one of these the one you're looking for? And they would say, oh, child support termination. So this is a little tiny bit different than what librarians might normally do.
Right.
But on the other hand, we're good at asking questions. We do that reference interview. And so this could be similar. We're still asking the question. We're still in the reference interview capacity of saying, oh, is this one of them? Do you see a form here that would work? As opposed to, oh, there, go to that one.
In a few minutes, when I bring up the PowerPoint, I've got a section on the reference interview specifically.
All right, very good. So Janet?
Now let's pretend I just said, yeah, I think I want to look at that child support termination form. That sounds like it.
All right, let me click.
So hopefully the patron's actually sitting at the computer herself, and so she clicks on this page. And when she clicks on this page, what will she see, Janet?
Well, immediately she'll be able to see whether or not this applies to her circumstances at the top. And what librarians ought to know, and anyone who has dealt with courts knows, there's always a variation on a theme. If we pick a theme, there's a variation to it. And you have to be very aware of those. This is a form that was designed based on a statute that was passed many, many years ago. and it only applies to these specific circumstances. And there's a very good reason for that is it has to do with filing fees, it has to do with what is in the statute and how things are arranged. And this is an interesting category, and I don't want to go into legal detail with you, but a child has to be emancipated first, then you have a court order to discontinue child support.
Yeah, now, this is a situation where librarians can easily get themselves into murky territory when it comes to giving legal advice and giving legal advice is a problem because there are pretty strict rules about unauthorized practice of law. So if you can scroll back up, there are several things. I can see a patron saying, well, what does emancipated mean? You can't, you can take them to a resource, to a legal dictionary or to a statute that defines it. But if you start explaining to them, well, that means such and so, you're getting into an area that can almost become legal advice. And if you give the wrong information and the patron relies on it and gets in trouble, you are then can be on the hook for whatever damages.
I like to use kind of the metaphor as the librarian is opening a door.
Yeah.
And it's the patron who has to walk through it.
Right.
And maybe one of the best things we can say is when we do get this far and the customer has actually clicked on this and has brought up all this information, it's another good time to remind ourselves, to remind them, to read it all, and that we sit quietly and be patient and wait for them to read. Because that's just not something we do that often. We move on to the next customer. But in this case, we might just say, you might want to just take a few minutes and read through this. I'm going to go take care of this. I'll be back to see if you need anything.
One of my slides coming up says we provide reference assistance. We don't interpret or give advice as to how different rules apply to a set of facts. So if a librarian keeps it in mind that we bring the patrons to the sources, we don't help them fill them out, we don't interpret them, then that can help us stay away from giving legal advice. And if you look at all of the information that's here, when is this pleading used? All these can raise questions that, and for many pro se patrons, if it's their first time approaching the courts, it can be very intimidating. So they don't know, and they don't want to do anything wrong, and there's questions about everything. And even if a librarian has had that experience and isn't intimidated, thinks that they know the answer, they need to be careful about giving those answers.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. I like the way you put it. You bring them, you open the door, you bring them to the source, let them make the decisions.
Right.
And the good thing you guys have done is you've tried to make this self-service.
Yes.
So it's easier for that customer to go through the steps themselves, which is great.
Most of these forms on this website that we're showing you now have a built-in safety net. And that is one of the things is if people read it, and I can't tell you the number of times I've had people call because they Google in, they hit the form, they don't ever find the instructions, then I have to walk them back through the instructions and say, read it and call me back. And even if they call me back, frankly, I can't give them any more than is on the page. If they need to find their court, I can show them where to find their court page and how to get contact information. But these are self-supporting forms, and they are, we readily admit, very limited circumstances.
So going down, scrolling down, can you just pull up a form? It says filling form. Click here for a complete list of forms and instructions. So that's a hot link, and then there's several forms. It looks like an application, an affidavit to obtain termination.
And instructions right under that. For every form, there is an instruction page, which are all done in a fairly simple way. And then there's the overall instructions are contained on the main page that you use
That we just
in there.
looked at. Yeah. So I think that's something that a reference librarian can inform them that there's instructions for the forms themselves, and there's overarching instructions that we just looked at on the page itself. So that's helpful for the librarians to know that these on the Nebraska Online Legal Self-Help Center, that it's been not only that there's forms, but there's instructions for the forms.
And they're not necessarily together. They're one after another on the list. That's good to know.
One of the things that we included are just general information questions that we get regarding court information. One of them, one of the items is like a criminal history.
And before you go there, I just want to point out, I want you to go back to the home page of the Nebraska Online Self-Help Center, because you're clicking on a bar that's not on the home page. And so the bar that we just saw, how do they find that bar? Or is it somewhere else?
No, it is right here. It should be right here. Where's my little records thing? Court records. Here it is.
Okay.
Alphabetical order. That's a big deal.
So
we know librarians love the alphabet.
That's good.
We do. We like alpha order.
Sometimes the rest of us are a little random.
So this homepage vertical list is the same thing that was on that horizontal bar that we just
Exactly.
saw. Okay.
That's once you click in.
All right. So
And Deborah's right to start here. Most of your patrons are not going to be fishing around on this site because they need to get their criminal record, get their child support done. They're going to come in from the start to the finish.
So go to court records.
And this is just so you know, we have put some self-service type items on there. If you want, many people apparently need their criminal history report, and it is recommended.
Now, we're not going to look up ours, are we?
Yeah. No, but we will take you to an outside page if you would like to pay $15. And I've probably gotten myself in a spot where I can't get back in.
No, I think you probably can.
But we tried to do some often asked questions in this section that I know court people are getting. I don't know if librarians are getting the same thing, but I was dumbstruck by the questions that came in when Julie Bino had done a webinar a year ago, how similar the questions that librarians and court staff get. I was shocked that people would come in and ask.
And this is a good example because court staff are not lawyers either.
Correct.
So they have to follow the same rules as librarians do. Well, for the most part.
Yeah. And now you raise actually a very interesting point. The fact that a person in one of these positions is a lawyer does not mean that they're qualified to give legal advice. Legal advice is really defined not necessarily by the credentials that the person has, but the relationship that the person has with the patron. In a library setting, the person sitting behind the desk is a librarian. And so when the patron comes in, the relationship is librarian-patron.
So even you,
Yes, right.
who are a lawyer, who is a lawyer,
Most of the reference librarians at the law school library are lawyers as well. But just because a patron comes in with a legal question, it's not a lawyer-client relationship.
sure,
To have that lawyer-client relationship, you have to have an agreement.
right, it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction. So every once in a while, a patron will find out that we're lawyers and then say, oh, well, give me some advice. We say, no.
So
That's
Richard,
not our relationship.
you're held to generally the same standard as a public law
Absolutely.
public librarian
Yep.
because you have the library hat on.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, and it gets very complicated. I suppose one of my reference librarians could agree to take on a case, but
But they'll put on a different hat.
Oh yeah, and they'd have to do it outside
Right, of the library.
And if they're smart, and they all are, they wouldn't do it in the first place. So.
So Janet, you brought up a page that's on that same site.
Yeah, yes, this is a piece that we have done for the courts, and I think it's probably been out there for 10 years, for the front counter people who encounter the same individuals that the library encounters. And we have it in a positive cannot, but really it does have some very stark limitations.
Oh, yeah. This is very good. This is similar to what I was telling you about the Arizona Supreme Court has listed that librarians can and cannot do.
And
It's
maybe
very,
we could
very
adapt
good.
this for librarians, maybe
Oh, yeah.
between Richard and Janet, we could adapt something
Mhm.
like this for librarians that they would have
A
right
little
there for them
poster.
to feel
Yeah.
more comfortable
Right.
Yep.
when they're helping
And-
people with this specific kind of
Mhm.
reference question.
Yeah.
Basically, what we did was request that courts take down the signs that they have at their front desk that say we cannot give legal advice.
Yeah,
Because as a practical matter, no one knows what legal advice is.
yeah.
The average person does not know that the definition of the word emancipate
Mhm.
would be legal advice in our world. It just seems like something you'd look up at dictionary.com and be done with it, and why can't you help me?
Sure.
So we put it in terms of the do's and don'ts for the posters for the courts, and that was just a little
Well, let
side
me ask
track.
the participants that are watching now, if this is something that you feel would be useful to you and or to your staff, that we could make available to you, you can just email us later, or you can chat right now in your chat box and let us know if that's something that would be of use to you. And we'll let Janet go on.
I just want to get through my final big button here. When you can't afford a lawyer, a lot of this information is just general information that people can surf through, and either you need it or you don't. But when you can't afford a lawyer, we have reference lists, and really this is a referral resource for people to find low-income legal help or free legal assistance. Much of it that's supported by the state or by the Bar Association is for low-income individuals.
Oh, this is so cool, Janet, because a big role of librarians is referral to
Mhm.
other professionals and other individuals in the community. This is so cool.
You know, in fact, one of the most frequently used answers to pro se patrons when they come into the law library for to research their own legal problems is, you really should have a lawyer.
Mhm.
And most of them say, well, I can't
I can't
afford
afford
one.
one.
And so this is an excellent.
And I just want to confirm, we use the word pro se quite a bit, and that's just
Oh.
a legal Latin term, and it means someone who is representing themselves in their legal matter. So if you hear us say pro se, it's the same thing as self-representation.
And it doesn't really mean necessarily that you're representing yourself in court. It might be that you're just trying to find the right form to fill out to pay
Right.
a fine, or
Right.
you know, something like that.
Right, it's kind of your DIY, do-it-yourselfer, you know, that I want to
Well,
do it
you
myself.
should use that instead,
Yeah.
DIY.
Yeah.
DIY.
And I'll turn into yard crashers.
Yeah.
Top on our list is Legal Aid of Nebraska, and I can't remember Dave's statistics, but I thought he said they could help 1 or 2% perhaps of the people that come in.
Wow.
So folks are frustrated. They go for help. They either don't income qualify, or legal aid has to conflict out because they're representing the spouse, or something else happens. They can only help very few, and yet their doors are open and they're packed, brimming with people.
I just want to go back up there. They have these access lines, and I know sometimes people say it's hard to get through, but I do want to point out the elder access line. If you're age 60 or over, I went to a seminar recently on elder issues, and the woman who takes care of that line says that it's not an income-based line. So a person with any income level, as long as they're 60 years old or older, if they have a question about elder law, Medicaid, you know, et cetera, that they can call that 800 number.
That's great.
I have a problem with a cutoff of 60.
I
being
do
elder.
too. I'm sitting here going,
Personally,
60 is elder? Oh, well, I didn't want to talk about that.
Oh, I
Yeah,
just can't wait to qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next on our list is law school legal clinics, and that has a similar, aside from a geographic issue for most of the Nebraskans, it has a similar unique clientele in that they take certain kinds of cases to get their students practice. So it may not be based on needs of individuals across the state. It may be based on needs of what their students have in order to practice in court, which makes sense. They are offering a free service. Self-help centers are Lincoln, Omaha, and then the Tri-City area, Hastings, Grand Island, and Kearney. And those have very limited hours, but the hours are online. Most of them are drop by. So if you can show people resources, they can find a form, they can get it half filled in, they're going to be better off by the time they drive to Grand Island to have it checked on a Friday afternoon. They'll be miles ahead of the curve if that all works out for them.
And I want to point out that I've worked at the Lincoln Self-Help Center, and we've visited, both of us have visited the different self-help centers. They don't right now really have the capacity to have people sitting down at a computer and with a printer. And so in a way, the public libraries can be that, as Janet was describing, the first stop where, you know, the person is printing stuff out, and then if they still have questions, and if they're geographically close to Grand Island, Lincoln, and Omaha, then you can take your paperwork and go there.
And now we have libraries, my personal favorite. We start with a lot of courts because the state law library is internal to our system. It's part of the Supreme Court. A lot of courts will refer directly to the state law library. Maria is there to help you at any time. Public libraries, and then the college law libraries. What I would like to do at this point is hop off the website. That was the end of my website presentation, but invite you to peruse the website at your leisure. We will be adding. Go ahead.
The referral services also are important. We refer many people to the State Bar Association's lawyer referral service. Now, I don't know how effective it is, but
that is out there.
Yeah, it is out there, and I think it's an important resource for people to be aware of. If they can't afford a lawyer, they can call, and I think they have a revolving system where lawyers can volunteer. And isn't there a requirement in Nebraska bar for? Okay.
No, darn.
Oh well.
Yeah.
And that's right. I jumped over that, and I shouldn't have. I thought I was so happy to be done and make Richard take my seat. But
I wasn't going to let you get away.
No, you won't let me leave. The woman who runs the lawyer referral service also works the self-help desks and coordinates the lawyers for that. So she's very entrenched in the system of providing lawyers to assist. And I don't know that same rules apply in that end in terms of forms, but having people know what they're talking about and getting some basic background and information so they can become self-educated is much better than sending someone in completely cold. The lawyers on the lawyer referral service will assist people start to finish, but those again are few and far between. They volunteer, it goes through a cycle. Last time I talked to Jean at the Bar Association, they were doing a lot of elder and a lot of family law, doing a lot of guardianships.
I just would like you to go back to the home page because I can't sit here and
She will not let me leave.
Let you leave my favorite. Go under self-help services.
Sorry, Deborah.
Got to put in a plug. Well, I have two favorites, but mediation. People who also want to solve their own disputes themselves can also ask for a mediator to sit down with them who's not necessarily a lawyer. It's often much less expensive, sometimes depending on income, free. And if you click down on the nonprofit mediation centers, there's a map across the state. Okay, the map is up at the second click here at the top of the page on the middle. And there's the contact information and website. And you can just click on whatever county you're in, and it'll take you to that mediation center link so that you can call the mediation center and say, hey, I'm having a problem with my next door neighbor. They keep the trees falling over on our fence, and I want to do something about it. They're not answering my phone calls. You can call the mediation center, and they'll do the legwork for you and call your neighbor and see if they can set up a mediation. And so you might not have to go through the formal legal process. You might be able to resolve it on your own.
And one thing that we didn't mention is all of the information that is provided on our website and on, at least at this point, and through the self-help centers is civil, meaning non-criminal.
Mm-hmm.
If you are charged with a crime, there is a public defender system that is in place for people who are low income. And really our goal is to provide resources for people who cannot afford these resources ordinarily. Again, your best option is to go to a private practice attorney, which is why the public defender system is set up in the way that it is.
For the criminal.
For the criminal
Mm-hmm.
side, for the civil side, we just know that there is such a high need for these services that we're going one tier up in terms of solving that problem, and that is the libraries and my introduction of Richard. So we can trade and he can control the slideshow.
Sure.
Okay. Musical chairs.
Yes. I'm just going to move the microphone over a little bit so I can catch your, yeah. Do you want to take that? Hold on. Just put it right next to you.
Okay, and it's already fired up.
Yep, you ready to go?
Well, one of the issues that we touched on briefly when we were putting this together, we thought that it would be helpful to have a little complement to what we've already discussed about how to handle the reference interview and where some of the resources are and some of the services that are available for you in doing research. So first of all, to start on a sort of a down note, cautionary note, the unauthorized practice of law, as we mentioned earlier, is a place where you can, reference librarians really need to be cautious about giving too much legal advice, and I can't emphasize this enough, as it says in the first bullet point there, that we provide research assistance, reference advice, we don't perform research for patrons. This is an area where patrons often will say, can you help me find, such and so materials, or what is the law on this or that topic? As soon as you start doing that, you are sort of quasi-performing, legal practice. You are helping the person do what a lawyer would do, and you need to be, careful about that. There, in the second bullet there, it came out as 2 bullet points, but it refers to a good resource that I would encourage all librarians to be aware of. The American Association of Law Libraries has a special interest section, state court and county law libraries. We like initials, so it's the AALL SCCLL-SIS. The website is down there at the bottom, allnet.org/SIN, and I wouldn't
I'll just
trying to memorize
interject
that.
here. Don't try and write down any URLs you see in this. When we post our recording of this, we will have links out to all of these along with the recording as well. So don't try and worry about trying to scribble that down. We'll have it for you afterwards.
And if you Google SCCLL for state court and county law libraries and unauthorized practice, you will get this website. And I guess we could go here, can't we?
Yeah, sure. Should have opened up if you've got it.
Yeah, and here is the website. There are some excellent resources here, and this one in particular, the third bullet on that top section, we can and we cannot. This is the site.
And they have it in Spanish.
Yeah, and here it is.
Yeah.
We can explain and answer general questions about how the court works and so forth. Usually answer questions about court deadlines, but we can't tell you whether you should or shouldn't bring a case to court. tell you what to say in court. It's similar to what you have.
I would say exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, I'd assume these rules apply to every state. It's not that, those kind of what you can and can't do is not state specific.
Exactly.
That's just, yeah.
And let's see if we go back here. Yeah, and there is a collection development tab over here on the right. This is something that is for state and I can't even say it. State court and county law libraries. So the collection development advice that we have here is overkill for most public libraries, but it can be useful. It's nice to know that the resources that are there.
Well, Richard, what I think is so helpful is the fact that, as you said earlier, even though you're a lawyer and you're at a law library, your hat out there is as a librarian, a reference librarian. And so all of the good research you've done in this field, you've already paved the way for all the public libraries that are listening in right now. So I think that's just so helpful.
Yeah, and we, of course, are always a good background or backup. If a librarian ever gets themselves into a point where they think they need extra help, they always call us.
Kind of say, how can we handle this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You can call, it's the hotline.
The hotline.
You can be the hotline.
402-472-3548 is the reference desk, and someone will always be able to help out. These are our two basic rules for the reference interview. Find the law, we don't interpret and apply it. I'm repeating myself, but as I said, can't emphasize this enough. Help people find the materials they need to do their own research. Patrons will sometimes get a little impatient with us because we tell them that we can't do the research for them, but if they come down to the library, we can help them find it. Well, what are you there for? But we just can't go
So there's another
further.
seminar on how to have thick skin.
Yes, that's right. You develop it. So these
That's a
are
typical librarian thing in general.
Is it?
that's
Okay.
right. That's right. Well, and in pro se patrons, what did we decide we were going to call it? DIY patrons, are in trouble and they're under a lot of pressure. In fact, this is one thing I tell all of my reference librarians that I mentor in law libraries. No one ever comes to a law library just for fun, for recreation. They may,
curious.
they may go to museum for entertainment or a public library for fun. Let's just go visit for the afternoon. But they never we never have patrons come to the law library. Oh, we're just hanging out, and we wanted to see if you got any new books lately. That all patrons that come into a law library and to a public library, if they come in with legal problems, they're under the gun. They're under a lot of pressure. And so you need to treat those patrons with kid gloves.
Really important.
It's very, very
Awareness.
important to them.
Yeah.
And as a result, when you get to the point where, we have to confront what's up on the screen right now, that we don't do this, we don't do that, they're very sensitive to being told no. They can also be quite clever
In asking the question.
yes, right, in trying to get you to answer the question anyway. You could say that they're manipulative, which they are. So it's just something that we have to be careful about. And here, this is the last time that I'll hammer this point home, but these are our do-nots that we have at the Schmid Law Library in particular. We don't do legal research. We don't interpret information. And this is one that many librarians who are listening to this will confront. Frequently, the patron will call and they'll ask for something. They may even have a direct cite to a case or a statute. Say, well, can you just read it to me over the phone? we have a strict rule that we do not read materials on the phone. Partly because as soon as you start reading it, you know that on the other end, the patron is going to be taking notes and may get it wrong. And you can get yourself in trouble for that. Even if it's not legal trouble, you just get in trouble with them because they can say that you didn't read the whole thing or didn't read it appropriately. But it can easily lead into questions about what it is that you're reading. What does that mean? Can you read that over again? And it just gets too complicated. We don't select forms for people, and this is what we were talking about earlier. We'll bring them to the room, open the door. These are the forms that are available for you, but we don't select the forms. This is something that if a patron has decided they want to represent themselves in a legal matter, they are taking responsibility for making these decisions. You don't want to help them choose language to use in the forms, or help them fill them out and provide advice on legal actions like, don't bother filing this, it won't work, or, oh, you have no problem, this is cut and dried. As soon as you give any opinion about the matter, you're getting yourself.
And the difference between Richard's forms and the forms on the website are that Richard has open-ended forms that were originally designed for lawyers or can come from much greater resource bases than the one that I have on the website.
Oh, yeah.
The website forms come, and I hope, double check when you give somebody a referral to the website, but they come with instructions. We just don't go beyond those instructions, but that is much, much more than Richard is giving out in his shop because he's giving them literally just a form.
Showing them the list.
Right.
Opening that door.
Yeah. A couple of just real quick, pointers that many outside the law library community may not be aware of, and I just wanted to point this out to people. One of the big issues in legal bibliography generally, and now in with a lot of online legal materials, is this issue, and it says, is the material authentic? But what I mean by that is you may have 10 different versions of a case or a statute or a regulation available on the web. How do you select which resource on the web is the official version of that case or that regulation? And the whole issue of authentication is a very hot topic right now in law libraries. It's far from settled, so I can't give anybody any particular advice, but other than, or particular advice at the moment, other than to say use common sense. Try to prefer official websites to the extent that you can tell that a website is official.
Well, which is why we so much appreciate what your office is doing in terms of putting together the self-help center website, because we know it's real.
But watch for this. This is, there will be materials and there will be ways that documents will be authenticated with either watermarks or with software that will authenticate materials.
I'm going to ask a what-if question. What if the patron comes into the public library and says, I'm going to get a divorce. I need to get a divorce. And I was here last week, and I went on the web, and I found this form from XYZ Incorporated. Is this the one I should use? How do we, when I'm thinking of authentic, and I'm thinking, I know the person lives in Nebraska, and I know that there is an online website. How do I answer that question?
That's a tough one. There's no easy answer for that, other than to encourage the person to use their own, common sense to the extent that they have it. We already know that there's a little check mark against them if they're representing themselves anyway.
That was a lawyer speaking.
That was a lawyer speaking. But no, you do need to be very careful. And with respect to forms and things like that, there can be many, many sources that are holding themselves out for, just get this form and for $10 you can, have everything done for you. And the rule of thumb that I've used over the years with my kids is you get what you pay for, and so you need to be very careful. There can also be situations where forms or materials can be put up on websites that are really lures to bring you into a, either some sort of online legal services and maybe sketchy.
Can the librarian in that hypothetical say, well, I'm not sure what would be the best for you. Have you looked at the Nebraska Supreme Court's online website? Have you looked there?
I would, yeah. If there are forms that are available on the Nebraska's Supreme Court's website, I would, tell them that common sense would dictate that these are going to be reliable.
Start there looking for
Absolutely.
what you might need.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think librarian would hopefully be doing by instinct anyways, and have to do in general for lots of questions that come to the desk.
Yeah.
People Google something and say, oh, look, I found the right thing because it came up first. But is that from the actual company that you are wanting to work with? Is that from the actual courts that you want to be working with? Oh, no, it's from like legalforms.com. I've just made that up.
Yeah, right.
And so that's kind of part of what they do with anything they do is, well, maybe you might want to go to the actual source.
Yes.
And that's part of how they help their patrons is, oh, yes, you're right. I probably should have thought about that, not just anyone randomly on the internet.
Well, that helps. So we are getting used to
Yeah.
that fact that the thing that comes up first when people Google
Isn't
not
always
necessarily the best
depends.
resource.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the librarians know that people sometimes don't.
The AALL website that I had up earlier does provide some links to other self-help centers. I believe Illinois has got a good website that has got forums. They're going to be more specifically tailored to Illinois and in the different states. But sometimes if Nebraska's lacking a forum, you can borrow from other states. But librarians should take an effort to be aware of these sources and prefer them over what did you call it? Legalforms.com. Yeah, and there's just too many opportunities for scams and things like that on the web. You do need to be careful. The second topic that I've got up there is it current? And I think that this is common sense, but it may be common sense to me because I'm a law librarian. But the statutes change, and they change frequently, and they are impacted by court decisions. And so knowing what the current law is more than simply putting in a few search terms in Google or even an online website and then looking at the cases. The most current one that it pops up in your search results may not always be the most current statement of what the law is. It's much more complicated than that. And so I'm raising this a little to caution public librarians for being too quick on the gun and assuming too much in their search results. And we've got a solution for that coming up. A couple of things that, this is something my staff always rolls their eyes when I mention this, but it's one of those things that many people, lay people, just are not aware of. They hear the word case and they think that, you go to the law library to research cases. And for example, after the O.J. Simpson case, we had people walking into the library saying, I'd like to read the O.J. case,
See, those
And
were your casual visitors. You said nobody comes in on a good day and hang out with your library.
yeah, well, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
I just thought it was an odd
But-
thing for somebody to do.
However, we did have to tell them no, that there wasn't anything to read. There's a big difference between trial court cases and appellate court cases, and I wish that there were two words to define them. In law libraries, we have all the resources in the world for researching the law and for researching how to put on a case, to conduct a trial. We have nothing about trials themselves or the results of trials. We don't have anything on the OJ case. Yeah, well, even if we do, yeah, that would be about the extent of it. What we would tell people if they wanted to read the OJ case is, hop on a plane, go to LA, go to the court and ask to see the court records. The thing that's important to remember is that second bullet point there, trials decide questions of fact, nothing about the law. The judges there, in a criminal case and in a lot of civil cases, the jury decides what the facts are. The judge decides if those facts, what they mean with respect to the law. The judge never messes with the law at all. And the conflicts are always about whether the facts result in a crime or result in some kind of liability or legal action. So it's only facts, and so we don't collect any information about trials. If you want information about trials, you go to newspapers or other resources. What we research only are appeals, and it's at the appeals level. The parties are arguing, yes, this fact, that fact, and the other fact were found to be true, or they occurred at trial, but the judge found that this resulted in liability when it shouldn't. So the argument at appeals is all about what the law is and what the laws are. And that's what we can help people research. The OJ case was never appealed, and therefore we don't have anything on it. So that's just a basic difference or distinction between the kinds of materials that are available. So the resources for appellate decisions are case reporters, digests, and citators. These are, for lay people, I would describe them as sort of horrific resources. The case reporters, the standard one, the National Reporter System, is comprised of approximately 50 to 70,000 volumes.
Yeah.
The digest is another several thousand volumes, and citators are almost incomprehensible. Resources that compare all of the cases that are reported. In total, there are about 4 million cases. So this is the raw primary law of case law, and that's available way over the head of most pro se patrons. And I feel so sorry for pro se patrons when they need to do this kind of research, because it takes quite a bit of work to inform them.
And in fact, I guess what we're hearing from librarians when we ask them what kinds of questions are they getting, they're probably not getting that many people who are in this category,
right,
researching at this level.
It's
more
when,
of the
Help me
day-to-day,
today.
help me get this form filled out, figure out what form to figure out or to fill out, or get my money.
Yeah. And so I think I've already mentioned this. For trial court cases, if somebody really does want to find out what happened in a trial, we send them downtown to the courts to request court records, and there's a process for that. News resources is what we refer people to for the OJ case. Yeah. But now, secondary materials, this is really the most important materials, resources that law libraries should have, and that we have to direct patrons to. We don't direct them to the appellate materials right off the bat. The first bullet point, I think, says that all secondary materials reign supreme. And even lawyers will go to a treatise or to a practice book before they start reading the law or start reading the statutes. This is where scholars or practitioners who are experts in an area of law synthesize all the cases. Whether jackhammers are getting
Well,
closer.
the jackhammers are getting closer to us and start to sit
closer to the microphone.
If you're having trouble hearing
Actually,
us,
well-
please let us know, and we'll get the microphone closer to Richard.
Actually,
Yeah.
according to the little sound indicator here, it doesn't seem to be catching it too well.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
We're
Might be
hearing
a
it.
dull hum in the background.
Yeah, I
We're
keep
becoming very
expecting things
afraid.
to start falling from the ceiling. But lawyers, have read the statutes, read the cases, and then in the secondary materials, they give advice to what the laws mean, how it applies, and give advice to how to handle cases. There's a few materials that are listed up there. We refer to them as the Nebraska Practice Series. Generally, that's not its exact title, but they're Nebraska Practice, Family Law, and civil practice, and these materials are published by the University of Nebraska Continuing Education office, and they're a little bit out of date. Any librarians who is interested in acquiring these materials should contact me or Sandy Plotchik, the Associate Director at the Schmid Law Library, and we can get you a bibliography. But the Nebraska practice materials, if you own them and they're old, don't discard them. Hang on to them. They're still valuable. The Nebraska Legal Secretary's Handbook is another good resource. Nolo Press produces a lot of self-help materials on almost every topic imaginable, and I believe the Nebraska Library Commission has a subscription to their electronic resources as well, the Nolo Press materials. And
Don't know about that.
I believe I've seen it, but if you want to acquire some materials for your patrons who may have legal materials, go to the Nolo website and select a few titles. They've got some on divorce, how to start a corporation, landlord-tenant law, dog law, dog bite law. Every topic, and they're written in plain English. They're for pro se patrons and everyday legal problems. The last bullet point up there, encyclopedias, national form books, and practice guides. We've got hundreds of these materials in our library. I didn't prepare a bibliography for this presentation, but these are the standard works that lawyers use to practice law. And again, you contact me, and we do have a bibliography of these materials.
Well, and if you wanted to, you could send that to us, and Krista could put that up on the
Oh, yeah,
website.
sure.
Yeah.
Along
We
with
can
the-
post PDFs, Word documents, however you do it.
Yeah, why don't we do that
Sure.
right along with the recorded version of this session?
Yeah, and then at the end, I was going to mention our the upcoming sessions, and in those materials, we've got a bibliography, for public libraries. And I think we're just about at the end of my slides here. I wanted to say some words about forms. They're rarely forms in the sense that you would, that most people think about them in terms of, a sheet of paper with check boxes and blanks that you fill in. Most legal forms and the form books that I referred to in the earlier slide are very, very large sets of books that are called form books. And what they are is they give advice and direction on how to create legal documents. And many legal documents are merely text documents. They're just written out that have very specific requirements. They have to have a certain kind of header. They have to have the case number in a certain place. They have to have the title of the document in a certain place, and it has to have a statement of facts. And there's lots of requirements. And the form books have examples of how these forms look and what the elements are. The way that they were classically used is the lawyer would get the form book, put his feet up on the desk, have a dictaphone, and then would read. And then the form book would say name of the party or description of facts, and then they would just dictate the parts that he was reading out of the book, fill it in with the facts, and then the secretary would type it up. And that's how. So many times patrons will come in and say, I need a form to file a complaint or file an amended complaint or file an appeal. And then we show them one of these things and they get mad at us because they think that it's just a form, and it's not.
And when there's a lot of blanks, people don't know what to write in the blanks, and so that's.
And then they start asking you,
right,
and
right.
and then we can't answer that, and they get mad at us.
Right. And so they will
Six
find.
Yeah.
So that, again, even though the Nebraska Supreme Court website, the new online legal self-help center, doesn't have a lot of forms, the ones that they do have are the most requested, the most used, and they have the instructions. And so it's kind of like when you're filling out your income tax and you look at your tax form, and then you have this big fat form instructions that you look on page 52 on line whatever to figure out what to put in there. That's what the Nebraska Online Self-Help Center has done. The form books, it sounds like you have at the library, the law library, are kind of these mega forms that really takes a lawyer's mind to figure out what to put in.
Oh yeah, some of the form books have titles like, West's Forms of Pleading and Practice, and so it's a
kind of beyond,
50 volume set that has everything imaginable. Yeah. And last but not least, here is the phone number for the Schmid Law Library reference desk. If I guess I should have put Creighton's reference librarian up there.
Oh, they might be thanking you for putting yours.
But it is Creighton
Yes,
is
Creighton
on your
is.
website.
It's on the website.
And then we've been talking about having a series, and please, people who are listening or watching, if you are interested in this, send the Library Commission requests or affirmation that you would like to see this, but we're more than happy to, and we have in the past put together seminars called Legal Research for non-law librarians. We give advice on performing basic research and have collection development advice and guidance for public libraries.
And we're kind of envisioning this, for those of you who might be interested in this, we're kind of envisioning this series as perhaps a webinar series where we would have a series of any number of one-hour webinars, and we would have librarians from the law library, perhaps others, give you examples of the kinds of cases that they are encountering, or the kinds of questions, I guess, that they are encountering, and maybe even do a little role playing so you can see how they address the question, so you can kind of get some visual examples of how to address the question, and then also they can show you what kinds of resources they point people toward. If you are interested in attending this kind of webinar, I don't know if it would be at this time. We might not be able to work it into the NCompass Live time frame. We might be able to. But if there is a better time frame or another time frame for you, if you wouldn't mind letting us know when you'd like to see us do these. We're thinking maybe in the summer. Is that right, Richard? or in the fall perhaps. The fall we know is really busy, so it'd be nice to maybe do these in the summer, but summers are busy too.
Anytime. They don't have to be NCompass Lives, and just like this one, everything can be recorded. So, yeah, we can figure something out, definitely.
So
We do have some people online that are very interested. Yes.
Great, thank you. Let us know your interest. Let us know what times are good for you. And if you would please as well, keep track of some of the questions you're getting, because I know Richard and the law librarians at the law library, as well as our folks from the State Court Administrator's Office, are going to be very interested in getting a record of kind of what kinds of questions you're getting. So keep track of those questions, and we'll try to make sure that we put together things that help you address those.
We did also have a comment. We do have our commission staff watch these sessions in another room in the offices here. And our government documents librarian, Beth Goebel, did say we do not actually have those Nolo subscription anymore. We used to have some, but we did them long ago. I know. But
We do
they're
have,
available from you guys, though.
yeah, we don't have the online resources, but we do purchase a fair number of those Nolo books.
We have a quote, also just a thank you from Gail Irwin from Ainsworth Public Library saying, thank you for sharing this information with us, and hopefully we won't see you in court. Thanks.
Oh, brother. Well, thank you all very much. I
Yeah.
can't say how much I appreciate. We keep moving the microphone. I hope you can hear us. I can't say how much I appreciate our panel today. This has really been great, and we hope to see you back here for NCompass Live again, as well as for other seminars that we can do on GoToWebinar.
Thanks, Mary Jo. Thanks,
Thank you.
Krista.
Thank
See ya.
All right, thank you everyone very much for attending this week's NCompass Live. And as I said, this was recorded. The recording of the session and the PowerPoint and any links that you saw here will all be shared when we get the recording ready and up there for you. We'll announce that. And I hope you join us next week. We'll have some of our commission staff doing a session on selections to consider for your book club. Titles, they're going to review the titles that you can have for your book club, and these are titles that we have as book club kits here at the Library Commission. So some of our reference staff will be sharing that information next week.
And I'm almost positive that none of the books that you discussed will be on my bibliography.
So the bibliography will be up
not.
with the webinar, and it'll be all brand new.
Yes. You might want to start a legal book club discussion. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Only if you need bedtime.
Yes, right.
Only if your patrons really, really ask for it. All right. Well, doesn't look like anybody had any urgent questions that came in during the session either. They're just very happy. Thank you very much for the great information. Definitely be interested in more. So we'll be working on that. Let us know what you want to know more about, and we'll share it and figure out what we can do for you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for sticking around, even though we went a little long today. Thanks for suffering through our technical issues here and our jackhammering.
They quit.
Which, yeah, it's their
Now it's
lunchtime.
quiet.
Great. All right, thank you, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.